On everyone. So in this section, we're going to talk about the LinkedIn text post, and I'm going to show you how to create content on LinkedIn without using videos, without using images, just purely text, the copywriting, and telling stories with that. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, a couple things you have to pay attention to as we start this lesson is we're going to talk about, like I said before, LinkedIn text posts. It's all plain text, no pictures, no videos. And we're really just telling a story on LinkedIn to create a piece of content, right? Good for anyone who is good at writing. Now, we're going to cover a few different examples of LinkedIn text posts. So feel free to use whichever one fits your writing style. You don't have to use every single example that we give you, every single template. Just go ahead and does what works best for you. And an important thing is you don't have to be a professional copywriter to write engaging content, right? Obviously, you do have to apply some of the copywriting techniques I'm going to show you, but even if you're just starting out and you're not super great at writing, you don't need to be. You just need to be real, authentic, follow the templates, and that's pretty much it. So follow the examples I give you to get started. And as you develop your writing skills, you'll figure out what works and what doesn't. And the important thing is to be authentic, tell a story, and that's what people will connect to. Now, a couple guidelines as we go ahead and get started is for your LinkedIn text posts, your writing style, make sure it's very clear and easy to understand, okay? This is very important. So avoid being super technical, avoid jargon that regular people may not understand. And even if you're selling something super technical, like an API or backend software or something like that, you need to write it for the regular person or else no one's going to read it, right? Make it as easy as possible for people to read. And you want to make sure you space out your sentences into paragraphs. So I would recommend, every 1 or 2 sentences that you write have its own paragraph to make it easier for your audience to read. Nobody really likes looking at a huge block of text, so make sure that you space out your paragraphs, and I'll show you some examples of that. And as you learn how to write copy for LinkedIn text posts specifically, you can apply these same fundamentals that I'm going to show you in this section to all the other different type of LinkedIn content, whether that's using photos, videos, downloads, etc. Right? So for any type of content you create on LinkedIn, you're always, having some kind of caption, always putting some kind of post, and you can use the same strategies you learned in this one and apply it to other examples. So for example, if you write a text post and you want to add a picture to it, that's totally okay as well. And the last thing here is you want to make sure that you hook your audience with your first line, because if your audience doesn't read the first line of your text post, well, they're not going to read anything. So you want to make sure you hook them in. So an example is, let's say, for one of the text posts that I wrote on LinkedIn, it says, a lot of my friends ask me, how do I get started in sales when I don't have any sales experience? That's a fair question. And so if people want to learn more about what I'm talking about, they're going to have to press the see more button. And when they press that button, how it's going to look is, they're going to get this whole text post where it's going to be a piece of content and hashtags at the bottom, and 3,600 people viewed it. So essentially, no matter what type of text post you are writing, make sure you are hooking people with the first line, right? LinkedIn is going to show a couple of lines in the beginning. So make sure it's something that's very interesting so that they actually press on see more so they can read the whole thing. Now, to start things off, we're going to show you how to write your hooks, right? So the hooks are going to be at the beginning of a text post. So the first tip I have is you want to use polarizing opinions or on the subject or some type of bold claim, right? So an example might be cold email is dead. If I write that as a first line, people are going to be like, what? Cold email is dead? How is that possible? I just started learning how to use cold email, right? And obviously, I believe cold email is not dead, but if I were trying to create a polarizing opinion to get people to read my text post, that would be it. I could also say something like, cold calling is the best way to book meetings with Fortune 500. If I put that in the first line, people are going to be like, oh, well, I'm not really cold calling right now. Should I be? Because I'm trying to reach out to Fortune 500. And they're going to click on the see more, and they're going to want to learn more about what I'm writing about. Another example of your hook could be, talking about a problem your audience experiences. So people are very attracted to problems, right? And pain. So if you can relate to that pain, people are more likely to read your posts. So an example would be, how do you get a high paying sales job without any sales experience? So for me, I do a lot of sales coaching, and a lot of people, they don't have any sales experience and they want to get paid. So how exactly do they do that? So if I start off one of my LinkedIn posts like this, a lot of people are going to read it because they want a high paying sales job, right? So it's a problem I know that people have, and I'm just talking about it. Another one is ask an open-ended question. So I can say something like, what's the best way to generate leads? ... And then, because it's an open-ended question, people might be like, oh, cold email is the best. Oh, cold calling is best. LinkedIn is best. Everyone has their own opinions. And so they might click on see more to see, what other people are thinking. And, they might want to respond to the comments to give their opinion as well. You can also use some kind of data to start things off. So you can say 17% of Americans check their email as soon as they wake up, right? And so this might be baiting people to come into the LinkedIn post. It might be a post about, how to send cold emails or why cold email is the best form of lead generation, right? If everyone's checking it the first thing they do when they wake up. So that is an example of using data. You can also do lesson learned. For example, one of my biggest mistakes was, and then you kind of talk about that mistake. And people are attracted to that because it's a personal story that they can relate to. Personal story is also very good. It doesn't have to be like a lesson you learned. It could be like when I was younger, or when I was a salesperson at Oracle, or when I used to work here. People are always attracted to stories, right? So if it's like a lesson learned or a personal story, these are really good ways to hook people into your content. So now that we have some examples of, LinkedIn text post hooks, let's go ahead and give you some examples of, what the actual content may look like. So I'm gonna start things off with a personal story, right? So this is one I wrote 3 days ago, and let's go ahead and read it and analyze it a little bit. So I said, despite what you may believe, I wasn't born a natural at sales. So that's the hook, right? A lot of people, they watch my content, they follow me, they think like, oh, Patrick's really good at communications. But when I say the opposite, and I say like, I actually wasn't that good when I started, people are naturally interested. So they click on see more and they get the whole thing. So I'll say, back in my teenage years, I was a shy, awkward kid who couldn't even get girls to go to a school dance with me. Again, this is like almost like a sub headline or a sub hook, right? Because it's kind of personal, kind of interesting. And it's talking about like, the opposite sex. So people are really attracted to that, and it's very personal, right? So let's continue. But I always felt like learning to communicate and be persuasive was one of the most important skills I could develop. So instead of making excuses, I leaned into making a conscious effort at improving my communication skills. I suppose I leaned in so far that I created an entire career in sales. So if you find yourself struggling in sales, just know that it takes time and practice. And if you stick with it, I know you can succeed. And then put the hashtags, and people like it, commented, 4,000 people saw it. So for this particular post, I'm not really selling anything. I'm not, asking them to book a meeting with me so I can sell them some kind of sales coaching or a course or anything like that. It's just creating content to bring value to my audience and the people that follow me. And it's a personal story where I'm just saying, like, in the beginning of my life, I wasn't good at sales. I wasn't good at communicating, even back when I was in high school, but it's something that I learned how to develop. And I'm just telling people that if you stick with it and, you make a conscious effort to improve, well, you can be good too, right? Because if I did it, you can do it too. And so what I'm doing is I'm, painting a picture of I used to be not good at sales and communicating, and now I'm good because I put in the time and effort. And so in a way, I'm providing value and I'm telling a story, and I'm saying like, if you indirectly, subconsciously, I'm also saying, if you keep following me and you keep consuming my content, possibly you can be great at communications too, even if you're not that good right now. And so I know a lot of people who resonate with my content, they're not the best in sales, which is why they seek out content about how to become a better salesperson, right? And so, this message is directly for them, people who may feel like they don't have a lot of hope, or maybe people who, feel like they're struggling in sales and they really need some motivation to keep pushing through. This content is for them. And yeah, it really resonates because I understand my audience and I relate to them, and it's a personal story that is relatable to other people. Now, another form of content you can write is how-to content. So how-to content works really well because if you are like an expert in your industry, or you are, doing some type of consultative selling where you help people do something, sometimes it helps to just create content around actually just providing them pure value, right? So let's go ahead and dive in. So we start with a hook. It says, cold calling is one of the most brutal parts of sales. So this is something I know everyone can relate to. Sales is hard. It's emotional draining. So when people read that, they're like, oh my God, I totally understand. Second line is, most of the time, the person you want to call doesn't even pick up the phone. And even if they do, they may hang up on you within the first 10 seconds, right? So I did cold calling before a lot when I was at Oracle. I can relate. A lot of people who follow my content can relate as well because they cold call too. And although this may be the reality for most salespeople, it doesn't mean that cold calling doesn't work. Cold calling works exceptionally well, especially if you're prospecting into select key strategic accounts. But the problem is most people have this irrational fear of cold calling. Now, if this sounds like you, here's a simple way to overcome your fear of cold calling, right? Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and then conclusion. Once you become fully aware where these fears are coming from and that most situations aren't as bad as you thought, suddenly it becomes much easier to find the courage to do the things that most people are afraid to do. So that's my conclusion, right? So again, not selling anything, providing value upfront, creating a piece of content that's engaging. So what I'm doing here is I am talking about like a pain people have, which is cold calling. It sucks, but it works, right? So I know that a lot of people whose job it is to cold call, they're like, oh my God, it doesn't work. I hate this. Does cold calling even work in this, current time period? And I'm telling them like, look, maybe your manager's telling you to cold call the company you're working at, telling you to do it. It works, but you have to be smart about it. And a lot of people I know who have to cold call, they're afraid. They're afraid that people will reject them. They're afraid that people don't pick up. They're afraid of so many different things that are kind of illogical in a sense. It's like a unreasonable fear, but they just kind of feel it. And so I give them some tips on how to overcome that fear. So basically, this is a piece of content of how to overcome your fear of cold calling, right? And this is the piece of content, and it's just like step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, and done. So if you want to create how-to content, all you gotta do is start with a hook, talk about a problem people have, and then solve the problem with, step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, write a conclusion, and that is pretty much it. Now let's go into lesson learned, right? So this is kind of like a personal story, but you're just sharing a lesson learned. It could also be, let's say, a lesson learned from your clients or your customers after they purchase your product and service. What was their lesson learned? And how can you use that piece of content to help convince people that read this to want to engage with you more, right? So this is one more about entrepreneurship. So let's go ahead and dive into it. As I'm getting older, still young though, and reflect on my life, one lesson I would pass on to anyone trying to figure out what they want to do with their life is to take more risk. When you're young, especially if you're in the ages of 18 to 29 years old, those are the ages where you're young enough to do anything and old enough to do anything at the same time. There are a couple of risks that I took that changed my life trajectory. The one that stands out is when I decided to stream on Facebook Live every other week when I had free time. That's when Facebook Live first came out. I didn't get too many views, but the important part was that I was having fun, being myself in front of a camera, and I felt I might be able to make something out of this. The next crazy risk I took was leaving my 6-figure job and moving to Thailand to see if I can build a business while traveling the world. Fast forward 4 years later, and I get to make videos and inspire others for a living. Now, this all started with me taking a small risk to stream on Facebook. So if you're thinking about what you want to do with your life, I encourage you to take a chance on yourself and do the thing that you always want to do. You never know, a small decision today can completely change your life. So this piece of content is, not necessarily related to sales, but it is more of a personal story and a lesson learned. And the lesson learned is take more risk, especially if you're younger. But obviously, if you're older, you can still take, risk as well, right? At any age, you can take a risk, to be honest. But I'm really just writing this for pretty much anyone who feels like they are stuck in their life or they feel like they want to make a change. And, I'm not selling anything. I'm not, saying like, hey, book a time to talk on my calendar, nothing like that. I'm really just trying to provide value with sharing a lesson that I learned in my real life, right? And this was real where, I had always wanted to like make content online and be somewhat of a thought leader and get into that kind of industry. And, I took the risk and did it. And I started with just streaming on Facebook Live to get started. And, it built into everything you guys see today. So, I just want to share my story of how I was able to, find inspiration and do the thing I wanted to do and encourage other people to, do the same thing. And this works really well because a lot of people that follow me are, they could be salespeople who want to learn how to sell and build a whole career in sales. And this might be inspirational for them to just like do it. Other people may be like consultants, coaches, or entrepreneurs starting their own business or SaaS business, and maybe they're on the fence and they don't, maybe don't have the full confidence to just make that leap forward, right? And so, for those type of people, they need sales as well, right? They need to learn how to sell their product and services. So this speaks also directly to entrepreneurs who want to get started. And, when you create content, I find that what works the best and gets the most engagement and really connects with the audience is not when you're, just talking in the perspective of like a company and you just kind of just writing content, just the right content. The content that I feel works the best are the ones where you're telling like real personal stories or real stories from your clients that, some way they changed their life or made some kind of impact that completely, changed the game. And that's more thought provoking and deep, right? So the more personal you can make it in a sense, the better engagement you'll have and the better story you can tell. And obviously it's not like I'm going so deep into my personal life and my family and my relationships, right? It's just like me taking the risk to, become an entrepreneur. And that's something that everybody can relate to, right? So whatever it is you're selling, there is always a way to tell a story where you're kind of doing the same thing and telling personal, relatable stories. You just have to find your angle for your product and service. Even if you're selling something technical, there's always a story there. You just have to find it. Now, another example is using problem and solution, right? So this one's quite easy because all you do is talk about a problem that your audience has and a solution. So let's go ahead and give in my example, right? So I say, a lot of my friends ask me, how do I get started in sales when I don't have any sales experience? That's a fair question. And then I just go into like how to actually do that and try to provide as much value as I can in this piece of content. And really the main thing I'm saying is like, you don't really need any sales experience because there's a lot of people hiring for entry-level salespeople and they'll train you and they'll pay you to learn, right? And so that's basically the moral of this story. So what I'm doing is I know that a lot of people are, beginning salespeople. They're just starting out their sales career and they want to get a high-paying sales job, but they don't have any sales experience. And so how do you get paid well if you don't have any sales experience? And I was kind of in that situation when I graduated from university as well. And so basically they have a problem and then I have a solution, which is that it's okay. You don't need any sales experience. You need to find the people that are willing to invest into you and make a commitment on you, and you can learn while you work at the company. So problem and solution works really well. So for me, it's, like sales education. But for you, if you're selling software, consulting services, like for example, if you're selling something like paid advertising services, right? You could say something like, how do you, find new clients, generate more sales without losing money on paid advertising or something like that, right? So whatever it is you're selling, it's like you have to find the problem first. What is the real problem that people have and provide some type of solution that will get them engaged, right? And so those are going to be a few examples that you can use when it comes to creating content on LinkedIn. Definitely just use the one that works best for you. And, you can basically just use a few of these different type of templates over and over and nobody will notice because it just feels like a natural piece of content every time you put it out. And I use, very similar templates all the time. Nobody ever says anything. So you definitely can do it as well. And also if you do any type of video or photo, right? So let's say you wrote a piece of content like this, you can add a picture to it. And that's a more dynamic piece of content because it's a text and a picture, right? Or you can write this kind of copy and put a video connecting to it so that, your video also has some text to it. So you definitely can use the same writing style to use it for video, text, or PDF download, whatever it is you want to do, because it's the same fundamentals, right? You can just use this type of copy for anything you post on LinkedIn. And that's the beauty of it, because when you master this skill, you can use it for all types of content on LinkedIn, whether it's video, downloads, and pictures. So with that said, that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next.